And
I actually,
don't follow me off that cliff. Don't do.
Too late. He's right behind you. All right, so here we are, first official meeting of our training plan. And I was just talking to Roberto. We probably just, you probably seen the title. Roberto, it was something like Adult Improvers Training Plan or something about around that. And it's not that it's only focused for or designed to help adult improvers, but we were saying if it's gonna help Roberto and Omar, he could he could help anybody, from a baby all the way up. Now, seriously speaking, today's mainly to go over the exercises that we assigned because you were not supposed to review them after. Just do it, work on them, calculate, visualize, try to bring everything you know out and use it. Write down your answers, your notes, and then we analyze it. And of course, we're going to review some of your games. We're going to talk about what you're going to be doing next week as well, which is very important. The first 2 weeks you have in there. After this second week, we're really going to reassess. We've had 2 weeks. You know what? I like this kind of exercises. These ones I think are just too difficult, and so on. So, Roberto, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we start reviewing right away.
yeah, absolutely. I will tell you that with this plan, I already went to 2000, but I lost it all. I lost it all, so I'm
Yeah,
back on square.
and then you rolled over and you fell from your bed. That's
There we go. We alluded, I mentioned this in the previous video, but the structure, it not only psychologically gave us a sense of accomplishment, but as I was doing it, I'll give you an example. Uh, Tuesdays, I was supposed, day two, you're supposed to play games for X
Mhm.
amount of time. Well, I was winning, right? So what happens when you're winning? You want to win more. So it's like, no, I just have to follow the program. Same deal. When you're losing all the time, what you want to do? Continue. So the structure, while our intention is like, hey, let me do this, it kind of gives me a nice framework, and is very, um, because what I was thinking before is that I can watch YouTube videos, right? And like I watch a lot of your videos, right? Shameless plug right there. But the whole point is that that's inactive. I am just sitting and watching. Yes, I'm learning, but there's an application piece, and I can watch 3 hours of YouTube, call it training chess, and I'm really not training. I'm just learning. I think this is pushing me to be more active in my learning.
Exact, and it's important, and it goes back to what I mentioned last in the first video we got together, which is a lot of adult improvers. They sit down, watch YouTube videos, which is okay, and they
Mhm.
learn a lot about the game. Like they get knowledge. Like, oh, this is the name of the opening. This is this world champion played this and that. But the actual hands-on training, sitting there with an exercise, spending 10, 15 minutes, which is very close to an actual game, it never happens, or it happens. It doesn't happen the way or the frequency that it should. So absolutely, absolutely, we have to put in the work. We have to do it. All right, very good. So let's get to it. The first exercise I probably changed already for you.
Yes.
This one is on the training plan. It is as tactics, right? So you were supposed to do your puzzle rush to warm up, nothing crazy, not like going like, oh, I need to break my record just to get your blood pumping, just to get in the mood. And the first question that I have for you is that how did you find that exercise, the puzzle rush? Like annoying or pretty good idea to start?
I like them. I do them every day already, but for me, it was warm ups, and I like it. I am aiming to improve my numbers. So,
Very good, very good. According to you, if you're playing this game, what would you have played? What is your answer here?
when I walked in here, playing as white, I'm a piece down.
Hmm.
So that's one of the first things that I noticed. Space wise, I feel like black is a little bit better. I can see the queen is knocking at my door.
Hmm.
Um, but I also see black has the C7 pawn hanging.
Hmm.
So that's my first assessment on the lay of the land.
Okay. Now, we get that evaluation, and I'm glad that you are looking at the material, right? So we want to look at the king's situation, we want to look at the material, and being down a piece, it tells us we got to do something drastic here, either going for checkmate or something that gets us sufficient material, because we're down a piece. Forget about simplifying the game and so on. Now, candidate moves that came to mind right away, the top three moves.
Yeah, my top three moves, of course, was queen takes c7, but really, like you mentioned, part of my assessment is it's not going to even the game for
Hmm.
me in that way. So from that point, I start saying, okay, the basic stuff. Where can I do checks? Can I do? I see that the knight, rook, and the G7 bishops are there. So I was kind of finding a way to lose that approach.
Hmm.
So I hate calling it hope chess, but when you calculate, it's like if I do this, I hope the opponent do that, and I know that's not the right approach.
Exactly.
Uh, but I initially thought of taking uh, bishop f6, and then from there, bishop, and this is a continuation. Then bishop takes f6 again, taking my bishop, that would allow my queen to move into queen takes g6. I mean h6 with a checkmate.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
But
So, okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
that is if he takes with the bishop. It's because he can
Take with the rook
take
as well.
with the rook, and that's when things get a little bit complicated because if he takes with a rook, maybe I can. I mean, I just traded a bishop for nothing for a pawn because I can take a pawn. So usually that's the only alternatives that candidate moves that I got as far.
Okay, now I have to ask: did you consider the move queen takes pawn?
I did, but I didn't see. For some reason, I didn't see the continuation.
No,
Because
no, no,
if
and that's okay. That's
yeah,
okay. Though I just want to
if
know
I
if
take
you
the queen,
considered it.
yeah, if I take the queen, the bishop takes, then I can take the knight with a check. But again,
It
that
means
rook,
nothing. It means nothing. I know this is not the move, of course. It's just we have to consider it, like you did.
correct.
Even if it's for 2 seconds, we have to. Now, how about rook takes bishop?
I did. But if I had that rook, I consider actually the rook. He don't. It's not a forcing move. That was my only. That's why I disqualified because at this point I'm trying to leverage what I can do. If I
Hmm.
put the rook there, he takes with the king. I can always move my other rook from D to G with check.
Correct.
I can actually take with the my queen the C7 pawn
Hmm.
if the king is there. So, but the best way to diffuse that is for him not to take it, and he can, and even if I do all of that, he can bring the rook to f7 and then put pressure on my queen again, which I don't know.
Well, I have to tell you, and this is the official answer.
Okay,
The move is definitely rook g7. It is indeed
and
rook
that's
g7.
gonna
Now,
hurt.
let's talk about this. So, if I'm looking at this, right, I'm looking at queen h6 as a check. I'm looking at these captures over here. So, all of the checks and captures, they're pretty forcing because I'm taking something from you. So, you have to do something about it. Definitely, I know for a fact that if I give you my bishop, like these bishops are the main indicator that or the main elements in our attack. They're both aiming at the king side. That king side is not as safe because it has only one pawn, the castle. So I don't want to give the bishop unless I see something concrete, and it's not the case. Now, rook g7, the one thing that is attractive is if they take, I removed one of your defenders and I could replace my attacker. So basically, you're just going to be the same position but one defender down. And that's going to give me a very good chance to attack you. Now, you mentioned, well, if I take on g7, they don't have to take me. But the thinking right after that is, well, what am I attacking? What is my threat? Let's say he doesn't take. What is my threat? Number one, I got the piece back. I'm down a piece. Now I have the piece back and I maintain the attack. I didn't simplify anything. I still have all of my pieces active. But it's very important that you ask that, what's my threat? Because we're going to be doing more and more exercises that are not as ideal. Like when you do tactics on chess.com, it's like check, 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 and you know it's going to be a beautiful checkmate or a beautiful tactic to win material. Well, the actual games, they're nothing like that. So you have to really rely on these questions. Okay, this
Yeah.
move, I like it. I know they don't have to take me, but what am I really threatening? Oh, I'm threatening after rook g7. I'm threatening to take on h6. How can you stop that if you don't take my rook? And I just cannot think of anything they could do to prevent me now from taking that. And my bishop is still putting a lot of pressure over here. The other bishop is helping. So this in itself is already, I don't know, if you do something like this check that you have to consider, you just move up. Let's say they go back out. Now this is just the end of the end of it. Even here, thanks to this bishop, I could do something like check, you're pinned, and then we just go checkmate. And that's the end of it. But it all definitely begins with rook g7. Now, the critical line is, well, what if this guy takes me? If he doesn't take me, I got the material back, I got the attack. If you take me, now this is the line that if I'm calculating, I really have to be afraid, because if it goes wrong, I'm down too much material already. Now,
Yeah.
if you visualize without moving the pieces, rook g1, then you get to a crossroad. Well, they could move the king to h8, going back to where they came from, or they could go to f7. Now, after rook g7, king g7, rook g1, if the king goes to h8, well, I have my queen h6. And you can see now how the
Correct.
absence of that bishop makes it so much easier for you to attack. So queen h6, the only thing you could do is block with this bishop, because again, the knight is pinned. And then you could take here with checkmate, or you could go queen to g7. Now, Roberto, give it a minute just to visualize that, just to run it in your head. Rook g7, king takes. Rook g1, king goes to h8, queen h6, and then bishop h7, and then you pick if you want queen g7 checkmate or queen h7 checkmate.
Yeah, and I think the fault in my calculation, it was that yeah, when I took with the rook, I'm like, it wasn't forcing. What am I getting? But as you describe it, of course, I'm getting a bishop. I'm even in material. So
Yes.
I, I from a calculation perspective, a tactic perspective, I think that's the next step, because I was like, well, it doesn't give me nothing, but as you're explaining, yeah, it does give me something.
Yeah, exactly. And no, look, it's part of our fault. Like if you work with any coach from any book, they will always tell you, look at the forcing moves, make sure that it's forcing, that they have only one or two replies, and so on. So we have to now go from that thinking to
Yeah,
this sort of thinking, where it's not so perfect, it's not so under control, and that's part of it. That's part
yeah,
of the growth. Now, next time you do something like this, your brain is gonna be like, hey, wait, wait, wait.
yeah.
Maybe it's
And,
not
and
as perfect. Mhm.
this is exactly what happens in games. It's not as clear as
It never
type.
is.
So I know the viewers are gonna learn a lot about poor calculation from me, and I love
No,
it.
welcome to the club. We all have this. I don't care who you are. We have these problems. It just happens. So, anyways, yeah. So rook g7, king g7, rook g1, king h8. We got it covered. Notice that I'm not moving the pieces, because the more we
Correct.
do it without it, the better. The more we get out of these exercises. Now,
Hmm.
after the rook g1 check, if the king goes to f7, what move comes to mind? And I'm asking you this because one mistake we all do is we forget about the stepping stone method.
Yep.
This already is rook g7, king g7, rook g1, king f7. That's already two moves that we did. And for
Yep.
many people, it's going to start to get blurry. So a good exercise is, well, I can see this far clearly. So let me really put it in my head and treat it as a brand new position. From here, what candidate moves do I have? So if you can, Roberto, what comes to mind? After the king gets to f7, What candidate moves do we have? Give me two or three. Ideally three.
Yeah. So the first one will be queen takes c7. We check.
Okay, beautiful.
Um, yeah, I can actually. I actually consider the fork as well with the bishop, the white square bishop to um, c4. That's a
Mm-hmm.
nice fork protected by the queen, and opening my rook on the d file.
Mm-hmm.
So right now that will be my top candidate move. I can win a queen, change the game, but if I could checkmate, that would be better than taking a queen.
Okay, bishop c4, you're hitting these two, and of course you're gonna get the queen.
Right.
Now, if you're playing the game and you give me that, I'm already happy with it, to be honest. The only thing is here we have checkmate, like you said. But again, if you see that bishop before and you saw it, and I'm so glad you did, I'm happy with that. And that would be like an insurance policy. It's like I want to calculate queen c7 or whatever else I find. If I don't see anything concrete, I'm gonna get that queen because I'm not gonna let this get away. So, anyways, that's one candidate move, two candidate moves. Is there any other move that you think we should look into? And it doesn't have to be right. Give me a move, just anything that comes to mind. That you're like, hey, maybe we'll look into it. Maybe it's the worst move, but whatever comes to mind. That's what I want to see.
Yeah. Well, I want to get that rook into the action, my D rook, but I don't know if
Wait,
the
wait,
king.
wait, wait. That was my next point. That was my next point. I think you're not updating the image in your head. This rook, you're supposed to see it on g1.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right, so you really, and this is important. I get this a lot. Um, it's not enough to just say, "Oh, rook takes, king takes, rook g1." You really have to see it. You have to update it in your head. Imagine this rook here. You have to see a rook, a white rook right here, and then the king takes, and then you have to imagine this rook right here. Like really see it. If not, it's like if it's just words, it's not gonna stick. Then you gotta see the king on f7 and take a moment to really
Mhm.
hold it in your head. Okay, now my rook is not on d1. Like really see that d1 square empty. It's on g1. The king is on f7. The bishop from g7 is gone. And if you do that, you're gonna see the third candidate move that I'm looking for.
Bishop, an option. Bishop G6 is, but that's really not doing anything for me.
All right, we're gonna go with what you get. Now, the other move that is interesting because everyone thinks of this move that you're not telling me, and a lot of my students just don't see queen c7, which is actually the move. Um, After rook g7, king g7, rook g1, king f7,
Hmm.
queen f6 has to come to mind. We got the bishop and the queen working together. Give me that knight, and the king is being pushed to the edge and so on. So it's a move that it throws a lot of people off because it seems like the move, but it's just not the move. Now let's go into queen c7. So rook g7, king g7, rook g1, king goes to f7, then queen c7. Now just because you found this move bishop c4, I know in a real game that's going to give you enough reasons, enough confidence to just go with rook g7. I know you're going to play it because you already saw that far. So
Correct.
let's do that. Check, king f7. Now from here, you're playing this in a real game and you're like, ha, I got you, my friend. But let me look for better moves. Let me look at queen f6. Let me look at queen c7. Now, for the sake of saving time and energy, we still have a few exercises ahead. Let's focus on queen c7. What options do they have? What could they do from here?
Well, the king can have basically two safe squares
Okay.
in E8 and E6.
Is there anything else they could do besides moving that king to those squares?
Bring the knight to block the knight to D7 to
E-
block the queen.
Exactly. And it means nothing, but we have to consider it, right? So queen c7, knight d7 is easy. We just take it. Now, we got to look into king e8. We got to look into king e6. Which one do you think we should calculate first?
The E8 we can, if they move E8, and I mean, my opinion, some of the situations they don't calculate right. They tend to hide the king. They might not feel comfortable bringing the king to the middle of the board with the queen so close.
Absolutely. But we're gonna calculate king e8 first because the king is already trapped. Like he has nowhere to go. If we go queen c7, king e8, they have no moves, right? So it should be easier to calculate. If they go to the middle of the board, there's so many possibilities from there. So
Correct.
I don't even wanna get into that. If king e8 doesn't work, if I don't find anything against that, I'm not even gonna bother to look into king e6. So queen c7 is not the move. So queen c7, king e8. Again, if you don't see anything, if nothing comes to mind right away, you treat it as a brand new position. Queen c7, king e8. What are my candidate moves? What are my checks, and so on. So take your time.
Yeah, so I can slide back my rook to E1 with check, and that basically he can block with his knight
Hmm.
to E4, but really I just take, and then he can bring the bishop to E6, and I can continue. Actually,
Well,
I shouldn't.
I would say they're gonna bring the bishop first. If you go rook e1, they're gonna go bishop e6, defended by their queen.
By the queen, yeah. And I mean, I can slide my bishop to uh, B5 with a check
Okay.
as well. Yeah.
What if when you go bishop b5, they play pawn to c6 to block the check?
Yeah, I can. No.
Are you visualizing my question?
Yeah, yeah. What I'm debating is I sacrifice the bishop.
Wait. Let me stop you right there.
Yeah,
What is the move that we're looking into for white? Like the very first move from this position.
from this position, right? So we move the queen
To where?
to C7.
And we captured that pawn on c7, right? So you really
Uh,
have to visualize
that's right.
that capture.
The phantom pawn.
Aha. So the pawn is gone. King e8, bishop b5. There's no c6. I'm trying to confuse you because I really want to make sure that you can visualize that.
Yeah.
So queen c7, king e8, bishop b5. There's nothing they could do other than blocking with a knight. And then what do we do?
And then the queen right in front of is the kiss of death. Queen.
and then we just take. Perfect. Now we like this. If we're playing this and calculating this in a game, I'm like, this is checkmate. I like it. Now after queen c7, what if the king goes to e6? What move comes to mind?
I will bring the rook to E1.
Now they don't have the bishop e6 move because the king's there. So after rook e1, what
Yeah.
if they block with? What if they go king d5 at that point?
I'm trying to see the mating net or the valid squares for the king. Um, I can actually bring my rook to E5 with check. Uh,
Aha. So rook e5 check. What could they do about it?
actually, nothing.
So that's it, man. That's checkmate.
Yeah,
So
let's check.
check. If they go to e8, boom, boom, boom. Now, is this what you really visualized?
And the first thing, yeah, after we got rid of that phantom uh, pawn. Yeah,
There you go. Perfect. Now, if they go to e6, very nice. Now, of
rook.
course,
Yep.
this move is possible, but doesn't mean anything. And then we got the checkmate. That's it. That's it. Now, of course, it is a lot that we have to calculate. But even if you had given me this initial move, followed by rook g1 and bishop c4, I'll be happy with that. That's calculation, that's visualization. But I'm giving you this that I know are tougher because even if you calculate halfway, even if you do it right halfway, it's an improvement. So we
Yeah.
gotta aim for this. If we only get halfway, that's good. But the fact that you were calculating, that you visualized, that you spent 10, 15 minutes, that's really good. All
Yeah.
right. I think we have Omar. Let me just make sure. I mean, yeah. Let me just make sure. All right. Hello, Mister. uh,
Robert, did you invite him to the classroom?
no, no, no. That's a good one. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna go to the second one, and you guys should see it changed.
Yep.
Now this one was more about positional chess, and Roberto was asking me before our meeting. Okay, so what is this? What is positional about? What's the difference? I added it in the instructions, but basically it is anything that has to do with improving your position. It could be getting on an open file, getting on an open diagonal, something with the pawn structure. It could be activating pieces and so on. Now, first impressions, guys, on this position when you saw it. Did you Was it easy for you to evaluate it? Did some move come to mind right away, or you were like, you know what, I have no idea, nothing is coming to me?
Roberto, you want to go first, or
No,
you want me
go
to?
ahead. Go ahead, my friend.
Okay. At Robert, at first glance, these kind of positions historically for me, and mind you, when I say that, I'm not talking about in a game because uh, when you're for whatever reason in a game situation, I don't think nearly as much as I do when you throw a puzzle in front of me. You throw a puzzle in front of me, I'll sit here like, well, I don't know what to do. But in a game, it's like, oh, I'm going to do this. Let's just push this. This is, that'll work.
Welcome.
And I don't know what that is. I think it just comes from playing too much blitz. You just say, well, I can't figure it out. Let's try this.
Exactly.
Either it'll work or it won't, and you don't think about it. Whereas the puzzle, which has no impact on your rating and the thing that you protect and covet so much, I'll spend 15, 20 minutes, no problem, just looking at it, staring at it. It's not, and I don't know what that is, but it's definitely a mentality that I have to fix and I have to change. But
No, but let me
the,
interrupt you there.
yeah,
I think the main element is that in a real game, you have the clock ticking. You cannot spend 15, 20 minutes. Like right now we're doing
right,
15, 20
right,
minutes, but I don't know if I mentioned it the first time we met. The goal is to get to do what you did here in 6, 7 minutes max. 6, 7 minutes. You
okay,
cannot be tournament game. You have 90 minutes, and then every time you
right,
get to a critical moment, say, "I'm gonna spend my 15 minutes," like Robert said in the training plan. You just can't. So we
yeah.
started
No,
easy.
you're 100% right.
Every week we're gonna increase the difficulty level. It's just that we have to start easy and then do it incrementally. But yeah, definitely the main thing that I want from you guys is to get to the point where you identify critical moments in the game. That's it. That's it. Like here, if I'm
Got
playing
you.
this game at this point, the opening is almost complete. The only problem I have is my king is not castled, my bishop is not developed
Right.
from f1. So if that comes to mind, then we work on that. Of course, after taking a look at the maybe d takes e5, maybe some queen a4, queen b5. You know what? That's not promising. It doesn't change anything. Let me focus on what we should do at this point in the game, which is improving the pieces and so on. Before I can continue with you with your answer, Omar, let me see what Roberto has to say. Roberto, what
Yeah,
was
yeah.
your first impression? Because there
I
are a few
feel like
things that I want to
Omar.
add after. You feel like Omar?
Yeah. It's like Omar is in my head with so many schizophrenic thoughts on my game. But um, yeah, so
Man,
I
don't follow me.
actually,
Don't follow me off that cliff. Don't do.
Too late. He's right behind you.
but my assessment going into the game is we got equal material. It
Yes.
is a position that I hate to have on the games. I just feel that tension of close positions. Um, but a couple of things that I saw, I did see the queen play there, and maybe a way of getting that queen to b7 as well. I was thinking about that, and this is just my initial
So
thirty
you're
thousand.
saying Roberto getting to b7, like taking and then queen b7.
Yeah. But
Okay.
I was like, okay, that's juicy. I saw a juicy outpost on e5, but that knight was there, and I was like, right there. When I see an outpost like that, that's just like, how can I get that?
And it makes sense, of course.
Um, The king, I saw the king, but I could not queenside castle because of that bishop. Then I was like, well, maybe let me look at the king side, but that bishop is horrible there because
Hmm.
I have no room to breathe. And then if I castle that way, my pawns are already went shopping. They left me at the house.
You're right.
So that was my initial take. So from there, I'm looking at maybe have the knight g3
Okay.
to just put pressure on that bishop.
Okay.
But again, he can move the bishop
Back to
g6
d6.
and I don't accomplish anything. But it does open my white square bishop with some targets like putting pressure, pinning that knight on c6. So those were my initial assessments.
Very
And
good.
I would,
Now, I'm sorry. Go
yeah,
ahead. Go ahead.
no. And then the break in the center, but that square on e4 had three attackers, and I just didn't see a way of winning it.
Makes sense. Now, Roberto, if you had to make a move right now, everything you said, that was your first initial, that was your first instinct, that
Yeah,
was your evaluation. With that said, what would you play? You have to make a move because you cannot be here forever.
yeah.
What would you play?
So I will move the knight to g3, get the knight in a better position, open my bishop, put pressure on my his bishop that is preventing me from castling.
Okay, okay. All right. So going back to Omar, Omar, you said something that I get a lot with my students, which is, oh, I'm an aggressive player, so I have this nature, I have to control it, I have to. And I think it's more, and the reason why we're doing these exercises with that amount of time is for you to learn to be more objective. It's all about that. You really have to have a reason for your move. We gotta stop playing like Roberto was saying before, hope chess. Oh, I hope that if I do
Right.
this, they do that. So you have to be like, okay, this is what it is. This is what I can do with what I have. It's and inevitably, always your tactics are gonna be like. Even though I told you this is positional, I'm pretty sure your tactics are kicking in. Like looking for tactics. Like you were looking for queen b5 to pin it. Roberto was looking for ways to get to b7. No, no, no. Here, all I know is my king is in the center. I'm behind in development. So if anything, I'm the one on the short end. I don't want to open up the position. And this is basic principles. I don't want to play four to open up the center if I'm not ready for that.
Got you.
Right. So that I'm not even gonna look into it because I know it's gonna be a fist fight with the lights off and I'm not ready for it. So that's no. Instead, I gotta ask myself, well, okay, this move could come to mind, but then I'm thinking, what are they gonna do? Well, easy to defend, and then they have a6 b5. It's not really going to do anything for me. D takes e5 you mentioned. It's not only that you're giving up a central pawn for a flank pawn, but you're even helping them activate this bishop,
Right.
and then you're really, really in a bad shape. And it might seem like nothing, but you're gonna have to start to appreciate those things. The principle says the person with the more active pieces should attack and win. It's gonna happen to you. If your opponents don't punish you now, it's gonna happen when you move up to 100 points, and it's gonna be too late for you to start really getting the hang of it. We gotta start doing it now. So the main thing you should do is, what is my problem? What is that I don't like about my position? Lack of development. How can I improve it? That's it. Move the knight to g3. That's the move. Hitting the bishop. And Roberto, you were like, oh, but they move back. I don't accomplish anything. You do accomplish what you said. You're gonna open up this bishop after, and all of a sudden your problems are solved. So the move in here is indeed knight g3. Now, if you let me get this bishop, I can't say I'm gonna be happy about it. I'm gonna improve my position. This is a pain, probably the best piece the black pieces have right now. So I'll be happy to take it. In the game, they put it back, and now after bishop b5, this is the main thing I wanted to get from you guys. If you compare this position to this position, you have to like it way, way better.
Yeah.
It's like, oof, it's great. Now it's great, and it's not only that you improved your knight and bishop. For the first time in the game, you get the initiative. Now you put in pressure. Like Omar said, they have to react. But it's different because I'm doing it with the bishop. I have a second benefit, which is development. And then I could add more pressure with the queen. So now, how do you defend? Well, you got to use the queen. In the game, they went queen d7. Forget about c7 or d6. Then, if we have a pinned piece, we want to add more pressure to it. So queen a4. And this is a move that comes without any risk. I'm adding pressure to it. You have no way out other than rook c8. And then if you get this far, I'm already more than happy because you already have the initiative. There are 5 squares on this diagonal. All of them are occupied, and you're the one with a gun just putting pressure. Now, this changes everything. The principle says the person with the most active pieces should open up the game and attack. Now, if you tell me, hey, you know what, at this point I want to play 4, even without calculation, you could go with it because the principle says you should do it. Open up the position. You're the one ready to attack. They're just there, tied up, defending. They don't want this craziness. So that is the same principle over and over and over. In the game, they didn't play 4, even though it's one of the top moves. Instead, they went rook to d1, still improving their pieces, trying to open up lines. So after rook d1, bishop d6, the black pieces are ready to trade down pieces. If I'm being attacked, I want to get rid of pieces because the less pieces my opponent has, the less effective the attack will be. Now, bishop d6 was played. D takes e5. Forget about the dollar for the 99 cents. Omar, we just want to open up pieces. That's it.
Gotcha.
Bishop takes f4. E takes f4. And think about it this way. My king is getting opened right now. But I know if things get ugly, I'm just going to move the king, and they always have to deal with this problem. So that's what gives me that assurance.
So you're not even castling at this point. You don't even care.
I don't even care.
I'm gonna move the king there. Okay.
Like how
Yeah.
think about
yeah.
this.
How you? Like how you gonna get him?
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
How are you gonna
get
get me? And even if you tried, you always have to go back and worry about this. So this is my insurance policy, right? And that's all. So after E takes f4, B takes e5. Now I'm gonna give you guys here like 2-3 minutes just to see if you can find the next move for the white pieces. Try to think of candidate moves.
Yeah. So
talk to me.
Yeah, I would tell you my first tendency, even after we discuss it, will be to castle. that that would be mine. But I do see the option of moving the d2 knight to c4. I like that idea because if he takes, I get a queen, but I'm also opening that lane because that's a semi-open.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that has bells and whistles looking at that. So those are my 2 initial.
If you had to make a decision now, would you go with castling or would you go with knight c4?
Oh man, if I put an imaginary gun to your head, right? So, I like the knight.
And you have to go with the knight. Now, what is the main threat, Roberto, after knight c4?
From black, right?
No, for you. Like you go in knight c4, what for? Like what does black have to worry about? In other words, if I'm playing this in a game and I see knight c4, I gotta ask myself, what is it that they have to deal with? How forcing is my move? Do they have time to attack me? So that's my question. In other words, if you had a second move back to back, like you go knight c4 and you get to move again, what would you play?
I see a rook king 4 on d6. Mm-hmm. I do see an attack and nice outpost as well right now on e5, attacking the queen.
Mm-hmm.
Because he cannot attack me with his c6 knight, because then again I get a nice queen. That's what I'm seeing so far.
Three things about this part. Number one, good job, Roberto. That's definitely the move. And I've been doing this exercise with a lot of my students. You're one of the few who actually saw this right away. And it's just so counterintuitive. It's just so he's like, it's so counterintuitive because I mean, it looks like it's not possible unless you realize, oh, the rook is on d1, right? Now, it's funny because you got to it just like a puzzle. You looked at it, the tactic clicked, like a point, it came up, and you saw knight c4 because of the pin. Now, most people get to that move because they're thinking from 2-3 moves ago, they're thinking, I'm putting so much pressure on this knight. And we know when there's a pin piece, we're supposed to add more pressure to it. So they're looking for ways to get the knight involved through e4, through c4, through b3. And then that's how they're considering these moves. And then finally they're like, oh, of course, c4, I just want to get to e5. And I often say this in the videos. If I want to get my knight somewhere, like if I want to get to e5, I got to think, Where do I need to be to get to e5? Oh, I need to be on d3 or c4. How do I get there? Well, I could do it in one move. And only when you consider it is that you're going to realize these things. For Roberto, it was the other way around. He realized it simply because his tactics are sharp. He's that good.
Hey,
What can we
I
say?
get bad instincts and bad tact. The opposite of Omar.
So good job with that. Now, Omar, you were
Yeah.
saying I have the bad habit of I get into a line and I stopped if it doesn't work right away. One thing that you have to remind yourself to do is when, and this is not the best example, but when you're calculating something, let's say 2, 3, 4 moves down the road, when
Yeah.
the dust settles, like you're saying, knight c4, d4, I don't like it. Whenever you get yourself thinking like that, I don't like it. It's not good, and it's like a reflex, just stepping away from it. You gotta say, you know what? No, 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 no. Let me calculate one more move. That's it. And this applies more like I have some more advanced students who were calculating 5 moves, and on the fifth move, it's like, yeah, I take, and I'm winning. Right there, when all of us stop, I push them to say, you know what? When everything is settled, there's no excitement anymore. Just visualize one more move, just one more move, and build that habit. And that's going to save you so many, many, many unpleasant surprises. So in this case, Omar, you'll be like, knight c4, d4. Oh, I don't have anything. Well, no, look at that. Visualize it. You can calculate 2 moves. Stepping stone method.
Right.
From there, treat it as a brand new position. What options do I have? What candidate moves do I have? And we're going to do that until it becomes a habit. But anyways, knight c4 was the move. I'm trying to get to e5 or to a5. Doesn't matter. I just want to add pressure on this diagonal. Now, a6 was played. Thank you for the pawn. They castled. Knight e5. Finally, we get to that square that Roberto had mentioned from the beginning. Queen a7. And this is the last part of the exercise. We're going to give it 2 minutes to see if you can find the best continuation. Inevitably, if you play a game, a good game positionally, strategically, it will always lead to tactics. That's why tactics is the most important part. So now it's more of a tactical point in the game. Not that complex, but see if you can find the best continuation. And by the way, those of you following this video, watching this video, you can pause the video for as long as you want. With these guys, I'm giving them 2 or 3 minutes, mainly because I don't have a lot of time, but you could take more time.
I see a few things that I would do, but
No, no,
I'm
no,
so
no, no, no,
terrified
no,
to
no.
make a move because I've been wrong every time. So I'm
Well,
like, I don't know.
let me tell you something I forgot to say before when we're talking about this principle
Yeah.
of, oh, we have the active pieces, open up the center, and so on. This principle sometimes is going to get you into trouble, but guess what? 8 out of 10 times that you apply it, you're going to get it right. So my point is, don't be afraid. Omar, if you're being objective, if you're doing something that makes sense to you, okay, if you lose the game, fine. You cannot, if sometimes, I heard this quote once that said, sometimes in order for you to win games, you have to play bad. And I've seen it in my
Oh, that's
games.
a great quote. That's great.
I've seen it in my
That's great.
games that you don't know how many times I've reviewed a game and I'm like, oh, I played this perfectly and the game was a draw or I lost at the end. And then there's some games where the engine says bad move. I played a bad move, but that led into a tricky position where my opponent couldn't find the right reply and I won the game. So don't be afraid of do that. Just make sure that you don't play impulsively. Just make sure that whatever you do, you have a reason for it. And at some point, those reasons are going to become more stable. It's going to become better, and then you're going to win more games. So here, even if you end up losing, just if it makes sense to you, just give it to me. But don't give me anything unless it's what you play in the game. Whatever you tell me now,
Okay,
that's
I'm going to tell you. Okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to be definitive. This is
tell
what
me.
I'm doing. So this is my thinking on this.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing defending, on that side, and we can equalize that pretty quickly, is the queen. And so maybe this is an opportunity to get queens off the board. So my thinking here is I'm going to clip that knight. So I'm going to play knight takes c6 because, all right, if you, and they're not going to do this, but if they take with the rook, well, you've got 2 pieces, defending that position.
Very good. We're happy about that.
Yep.
Yeah. So if we like that, if that knight move hits the queen, he's not going to want to, or he or she is not going to want to, because now they're, it's. So I think you might end up just getting that for free. But if they trade queens here, which is what they're not going to want to do,
No,
then
there's no if.
yeah,
Like if in my mind, if I take a knight, I'm up at knight,
Yeah.
and your queen
yeah,
is
that's
hanging.
what I'm thinking.
The
Yeah,
only way to stay in the game, the only thing that I'm really concerned is if they take my queen. That's the only thing.
gotcha.
Anything
Yeah,
else, I'm up at night, and that's it. I just go home. After that, I just go back. I'm up a
yeah.
pawn and I'm up at night. So knight c6, critical line is queen takes queen.
Yeah. So the queen takes queen, and then bishop takes queen. At which point the rook is going to retake,
Yes.
and then you're going to slide back down to bishop b5, and that's gonna it's gonna force the rook to move probably to
b6.
you know d6 d6. I'm thinking
No,
to
no, B as in boy. B6 to attack the
I'm
bishop.
sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, b6. Sorry. And then at that point, you just start advancing that a pawn.
Okay. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Roberto, anything different or same boat?
No, the same. I was trying to run different combinations. I knew the tactic was on that corner. Um, but yeah, I agree. I think the only thing for Black at that point, once he moved to the B file, he still has that other rook that he can bring it to the A file and put pressure on that A pawn on the
Mhm.
Y. That was the only. But yeah, I concur with that assessment.
All right.
Either
So
we're both right or we're both wrong. So
you know what, Roberto, you were doing great, man. Until you remember
So you
you,
follow me off the
Roberto.
cliff, man.
Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah,
can't.
yeah.
I
You
tell
were
you, man,
doing.
don't follow me off the cliff. I
You're
told you not to do it.
you're like I have this 80 something student. He's 80 something years old. We met every Monday, and whenever he's getting a few right, he's like, you know what, Robert, I have to go. It's been a good day. He's like, I'm doing great so far. I don't want to continue because I know you're gonna get me in trouble later. So no, here, look, your instincts, your intuition is correct, but you're not really assessing this carefully. Definitely, knight c6 is a very attractive move. Like it all comes down from this. The queen is being defended by the knight and the knight only. So I want to get rid of that knight. So I look into moves like bishop takes, knight takes. Obviously, the serious one is knight c6. Now, like we said, anything that is knight queen takes is gonna keep me up a piece. So I need to look into queen takes. Now, all of us, we automatically think of bishop takes. It's a reflex, and that's what we have to be afraid of. You don't know how many times I'm playing my games and I'm like, hold on a second, because this is just going too smoothly. It's too much. It's too automatic, and that's where what is there's a saying in Spanish that in English it would be like danger is in the confidence or something like that. So when you get too confident, that's where the danger is, right? So knight c6, queen a6, bishop takes. It's just too automatic. What if I had an in between move? And again, I don't expect you to be there yet, but the more I give you exercises like this, the more you're gonna think about it.
E7.
Exactly. So that's an in between move. If I take on a6, my knight is hanging on c6. So I'm thinking, what if I could be before I get the queen on a6? What if I could do an in between move to save the knight? And if you are where I need you to be when we're done with this program, your brain, without you even trying to look for it, your brain is going to be like, the moment I take on c6, I'm hitting the queen and I'm also hitting this with a fork. And that's going to give you that clue. If this fork didn't light up when you visualize this move, we're not where we need to be. And it only makes sense. That's why we're doing this. But then you're like, knight c6, this is irrelevant, but wait a second. When they take me, I could do what everyone would do, or I could quickly scan for checks, or just do the check that I already saw from before. So definitely give me the knight in between, and now I get the same thing you guys said without giving my knight. In the game, they went rook a8, simplification, then bishop d3, rook takes pawn, and after rook d2, we're up a bishop. This should be easy for you guys to convert, but we definitely got a bishop. Now, notice how we went from this position that seems like, where do I start? Well, follow the principles, activate your pieces, knight g3. Then the bishop, where do I go? You could go e2, passive, or you could go to b5. Now I'm putting pressure. I don't know if this is going to lead to anything, but now my opponent has to react to something. If I go something like bishop e2, they're having fun. There's no pressure on them. So whenever you can, in the lower the level you're playing at, the more important this is. So difficult to defend at any level. At the lower levels, even more difficult. So queen a4, rook d1, open up the position. We've talked about this. If you open up the position where you are with the initiative or with the pressure and you lose, it could happen, but most of the time you're going to win. So just trust the principles it takes, and then tactics start to happen. When your pieces are active, tactics are going to happen. They're going to be in the air. So that's it. I don't know if you guys have any questions about this specific exercise.
I, I have two big takeaways from this exercise that we have done together. The first one is it is to my takeaway is that I need to play with what the board gives me instead of me willing myself into a position that I want to have when it's not there. I think that's a big takeaway.
That's a good
Uh,
point.
That's solid. Yeah.
and the other thing is, it's amazing how literally from this position, and I'm glad you came back and show it, like in 4 or 5 move, you go from passive cramp position with solid basic fundamental moves. In 5 move, the position I'm already having dictating the action. I have space. My opponent don't have space. If you see right now where the pieces are, it's equally. My opponent is on the fifth rank and up, and I'm on the fourth below. And then when you move in 5, 6 move, I'm on their territory.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one thing that you guys don't know is the following: the last move for the black pieces in this game was pawn to b6. It looks such. It looks like such an innocent move. You're just defending this pawn, reinforcing, but automatically it created weaknesses on the light squares on the queen side,
Right.
and that's why the knight is before with that knight on b with that pawn on b7. This is never a problem. The moment they pushed it, knight g3, bishop g6, bishop b5, they have a lot of problem. The whole game was lost by black because they had to defend that knight, and eventually we just put pressure on it, and it was just a basic pattern that we all know, just really pushing for it, pushing for it, pushing for it.
It's amazing playing white against Magnus. Good game.
This is beautiful. It's
That
beautifully
was,
done.
that was a nice game. Okay, so since the three of us talked so much, here is a quick sort of a review of the exercises of the training plan. If you want to go over the long explanations and so on, feel free to watch the entire video. Otherwise, here you have it. First exercise, we talked about being rook to g7. The idea is to eliminate that defender, and then we renew or we replace our attacker easily with check, right? So it's the same position, but the black pieces have one less bishop. From here, if the king goes back, well, check, and now you could do checkmate, defended by the rook, or you could easily take since the knight is again pinned. Now, the other move they could do is after this check, the king could go to f7. Now, you should have considered moves like queen takes knight, queen takes pawn, bishop c4 with a fork. But the best move is queen to c7 check. If they block, we just take. If the king goes down, well, bishop b5, only move, and then checkmate. And if instead the king had gone to e6, you have two options. Either rook e1, if they take, you take again. If king d5, rook e5, or a little bit more difficult to find, bishop f5. If the king goes to d5, well, we have checkmate in one move, which would be rook d1. If the king takes, well, this is checkmate as well. So this is the answer to the first exercise in the training plan. Number two, it was more about positional chess. I hope you went over the instructions. If you want to learn more about it in detail, watch the entire video. But basically what we're looking for is to improve our position by playing knight to g3, hitting the bishop, probably the best piece the black pieces have. Now, if they let us take it, great. If they go back, we continue to improve the bishop to b5. And all of a sudden, we go from being undeveloped, blocked by the knight, to having a pretty dominant position after bishop b5, pinning the knight on the king. If you had come up with queen a4 first, it doesn't really matter, it's the same thing, because after bishop b5, queen d7, queen a4 is coming anyways to add more pressure. Rook c8. In the actual game, they continued with rook to d1, trying to incorporate the rook, And now we're ready to open up lines so that we can attack. Then this next exercise is a little bit trickier, and I knew all of you were going to immediately think of f6. I'm threatening checkmate. If they take, well, I could take with the knight. If they play g6, well, I renew the threat on g7. But I wanted to see if you were able to say, you know what, this is the move. What could my opponent do to prevent it? What resource do they have? And of course, you had to consider queen to g4. So queen g4, taking right now, they take you, you don't get anything. So once you realize this, you have to think, how can I prevent that queen from getting to g4? h3 is probably the most accurate move. They can never do that. You open up a escape square, and or you could do what they played in the game, which was bishop f4. That way the queen cannot get here. In the game, we had knight e3, pawn to h3, knight takes rook, and then after f6, we simply have a better position for the white pieces. This is completely winning. Now, next position that we have, and the last one actually, it is way more complex. This is Wesley So playing against Magnus Carlsen. He did not find the best continuation, time pressure, and so on. But I know you probably thought of, well, what about this idea? And then 97, oh, it doesn't work. What about maybe something like queen takes e8, queen takes knight f6? It doesn't work. What about rook g3? All of these are very attractive, but the move is extremely difficult to find. The move is knight to f6. Now, if they take with the knight, you go check, king has to move, and after queen f8, you're threatening checkmate on g7. Not so clear what they could do other than giving you the knight, right? Now, the main line would be, what if they go queen takes f6? Well, we take on e8, and this is why it is so difficult, because it's not like those beautiful tactics like check, 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 and then you win. No, here you have to really visualize this and say, well, my threat, what is my threat? Rook g3. What could they do to stop it? Nothing really. So that's why this is so powerful. Rook g3 is coming, everybody knows, and if they try to do something like this, well, I take. Thank you. If we do what the computer suggests, which is queen g6, we have rook g3, queen takes, pawn takes, rook e6, queen a8. And here I was talking to Roberto and Omar. Yes, the computer says it is 0.0 completely equal, but I would much rather prefer to play this as white. Why? Because it's much easier to use the queen. And if you're black, you have to make sure that you're defending everything. The pawn defends the rook. This pawn is defended by the bishop. If they just make a mistake, the black pieces, they're going to drop pieces. So I'd rather be the queen, easy to use, just looking for an opportunity to fork and so on, rather than having all of these pieces that are good and defended, but you have to be careful not to leave anything hanging. And lastly, if this pawn ever gets pushed, I mean, I'm always going to be ready to block it with my king and so on, right? And they cannot get too ambitious because my queen is waiting for the right opportunity to get them in trouble. So there you have it. This is a short version of the answers. Hope that you found some value in it. I also hope, if you have the time, that you went over the entire video, because there's a lot to learn from what I discussed with Omar and Roberto. With that said, just know on next week's training on day 6, I put as endgame, I put a free Chessable course by Judith Polgar. So feel free to check it out. It's like 23 minutes or so. This is going to be very, very important. You could watch the video and then over the weekend or something like that, just go over the text format of the exercises just to brush up on them and reinforce and so on. I hope that you enjoy it. Let me know in the comments when you go over them.